here. All right. Consistency. Yeah, so a little sick this morning. Bear with me. It's a belly thing. Thanks for asking. It's like some kind of stomach flu. It's like a 24-hour, well, 48-hour flu that the doc told me to expect. So I'm moving on to day number 2, but geez, it's a mess. So yes. Thank you very much. Bear with me, bear with me, bear with me. As I get into all of this. All the live streams seem to be on. We're not live on Fanbase today. We're on Instagram instead. Everything else is the same. We're live on Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok. Okay. All right. Relocation reality check. Remember, I got this stomach virus thing going on, so if I have to pause the live, I apologize in advance. All right. Relocation reality check. I know a bunch of you guys have been asking for this one. Got a bunch of numbers that the data team has set up, so excuse me if I'm not looking into the camera like normal. I will be going over some of these numbers as I get into this with you. But a lot of folks don't realize that sometimes, depending on their situation, it actually makes more sense for them to relocate, right? From a financial position, and sometimes also from a generational wealth position, right? So it's important to know how that works and why that works. And also, there are states we refer to as sticky states. Sticky states are a pain in the ass, and they make relocation difficult on the individual at the state level, which is what most people forget, right? So most people, they'll take care of all, the federal stuff, or have a pretty good grasp on what's going on federally, and not realize that there is some state work to be done if you're coming from the U.S., right? Doesn't necessarily apply to UK and Canada. However, there is something similar for our clients from Quebec. However, definitely applies primarily to the U.S. So what you want to do is you want to first determine whether you're from a sticky state. Sticky states are California. That's the stickiest state by far, in my opinion. New York, Virginia. All right, California, New York, Virginia are really, those are the states, especially California. Those are the states that give you the hardest time. Right, so those are the states that are going to give you the hardest time. Now, how do they give you a hard time, right? Hard time how? Hard time with what? Those states enforce their own tax residency, right? So you can, and they do this within the United States. They don't just give you a hard time when you relocate. They're just states that give you a hard time, period, right? So you could move from, for example, from California to Texas, right? In fact, Elon Musk just did this. I think it was somebody else, Tulsi Gabbard or somebody like that, just did this as well, right? So this actually happens a lot. You can move your domicile from California to New York, okay? And California will make you prove it. Like, they'll take you to court and be like, prove that you're not a California tax resident anymore. And in situations like that, like, maybe it makes sense. Like, if you're spending most of your time in California, what do you mean you're a Texas tax resident? You know what I mean? It's like, okay, fine. But in our case, you have left the country. Right? It's not some weird shell game of the super rich where you're pretending you're a Texas resident, but you're really a California resident, but you don't want to pay California tax. Like, that's not the case, right? And so because they don't seem to apply any kind of test as to who they're going to, go after to prove tax residency, everybody kind of gets roped into it. And again, like, I get it when there's somebody playing, 3-card Monty in the U.S. who's a billionaire. But unfortunately, there's no distinction typically. All right. So if you keep anything in those states in particular, but you can apply this to every state. Every state kind of has the ability to say, hey, wait a minute, you're a tax resident here, right? But those states in particular seem to always do it. So if you keep your driver's license, we've talked about that before. If you keep your driver's license in those states, what else? Bank account. If you keep a bank account in those states, your voter registration. If you keep your state voter registration, then in California, they can tax you up to 13.3% on your worldwide income. California's the stickiest state for sure. New York's almost just as bad, and Virginia. Right, so those are the states that we consider sticky states. Okay, those states they'll give you pressure to prove that you are no longer a tax resident of the state. Okay, so a lot of folks screw that up, where they think they got the federal government down, and maybe they do, and they completely forget about the state. And then maybe they're like super engaged and they don't realize that they can vote without having a state voter registration, right? But it limits which elections you can vote in, right? So a lot of people will keep their voter registration, and then the state will use that voter registration as proof that you're a tax resident of their state, right? And try to force you to pay taxes in their state. All right, so there's that. Let's see. Once you're here, that tax residency status would also apply to you here. Now, there's a couple ways that kind of mitigate that. For example, Class K permit holders are the permit holders where their permit leads directly to dual citizenship, right? The other permits don't necessarily do that. So really the only two direct paths to citizenship is Class K permit or spousal dependent pass, right? So you're married for 7 years to a Kenyan, or you're an ordinary resident. It is not a retirement visa. It's not a visa at all. I hate that. It's a permit, right? Visas allow you to enter the country, okay? And it's not a retirement permit either. It's an ordinary residency permit, okay? Now, once you're in that category, part of the criteria for the category is that you are not allowed to source any income from Kenya, right? That's part of the requirement of the category. That's why it has a direct path to dual citizenship, right? So because of that, if you have no Kenyan sourced income, okay, even if you're a Kenyan tax resident, you can really mitigate any kind of, tax implications that might exist. Now, if you're an investor permit, which allows you to make money in Kenya, right, allows you to own a business here, does not lead directly to dual citizenship, leads directly to permanent residency, then that's when you now have to start utilizing FTC if you're an American, FEIE, and these are all programs or laws or rules within the federal government, not state government, that allow you to eliminate tax liability. Okay, and so with the FEIE, what it does is it eliminates currently $130,000 of taxable income that was earned abroad, so while you're here, and so that you just don't have to pay taxes on that, on the first $130,000, right? The percentage of people in the United States that make $130,000 is like 16%. Okay, so all of the liars on TikTok talking about 200,000 ain't nothing, it's minimum wage now, I make 200,000 a month, they're lying. 16% of the entire country, look it up, makes that amount of money. All right, so you're probably good. It's adjusted for inflation. So the projection for 2026 is 132,900. We're not sure about that. They haven't released a number yet. That's the projection. But it's definitely already $130,000. Okay. So you're typically good on that, right? So that's the FEIE. FEIE stands for Foreign Earned Income Exclusion, right? So it allows you to exclude, right? Typically, people talk about tax credits and tax deductions. This is a tax exclusion, right? So it allows you to exclude the first $130,000 of your income from U.S. federal taxes. Okay, so first, that's your first, big move typically. Okay, so a remote worker earning 100,000, right, could pay $0 to the IRS instead of their usual 100,000, 22 to 24% tax bracket, right? Because of the FEIE. So that's something that's big for your tax professional to be versed on. If you mention FEIE to whoever's doing your taxes now and they're like, what are you talking about? Get a different person. Get someone who is versed in foreign income taxes, right? Now, the Kenyan tax system is there, but if you structure it right, you can minimize the whole Kenyan tax system thing, especially if you're a digital nomad, if you're here on a digital nomad permit, which does not lead to dual citizenship, or you're here on an ordinary residency permit, which does lead to dual citizenship. All right. All right. Now, there is no formal DTA between Kenya and the US. So what you rely on, and DTAs stand for dual tax agreement. Sometimes they'll be called DTAAs depending on the country, which would be dual tax avoidance agreement, right? Like for example, there's a meme going around about the whatever the Jake Paul or whatever fight, and the guy who beat him in the fight was from the UK, and they're like, oh, the guy has to pay UK taxes and US taxes. There's literally a treaty signed between America and the UK that avoids double taxation. So either it's a lie or his CPA is an absolute idiot, right? So typically when you're doing things across countries like that, especially friendly countries, they have a rule in place. In the US, even if there's no rule in place, then you fall back on the FTC, all right, which is federal tax credit. Okay, federal tax credit. If you're falling back on the FTC, then you actually get a deduction. Now that deduction could be dollar. Well, it is dollar for dollar, but it's up to 90%, right? It used to be 80%. That's a one like positive thing. That's one positive thing that came out of the big beautiful bill, and it only affects you if you've left the country. Is that it was moved from 80% to 90% under the big beautiful bill, right? So 90. So let's say, you have an investor permit, you have to pay, I don't know, you have to pay $100,000 in taxes here, which by the way means you're a multimillionaire. But let's just say you have to pay $100,000 in taxes here. Then essentially, after you pay that $100,000 here, you could go back and claim an FTC of $90,000 if you owe the same $100,000 in the US, right? So you can say, all right, $90,000 was paid to Kenya. I still owe you, $10,000, right? So you get a dollar to dollar for up to 90%. Again, talk to your tax professional and see how that affects you. Some states are going to have something similar. Other states are not, right? So you got to make sure that your state has any kind of like foreign credit. Sometimes the states even have them between each other, right? So you got to look into that. Sticky states, not so much. California really acts like a country, and technically all the states are countries, right? So technically all U.S. states are actually countries in a union, right? That's why they're the United States of America, right? So, but California really engages in that way, where they have like worldwide income, tax brackets and stuff like that. All right. So now you want to look at what is your cost of living. Your cost of living is it's not similar at all. It's definitely less here, but it's more if you don't invest in property first, right? So if you don't invest in property first, you're looking at a cost of living that, hold on, I know we got some numbers here. Let's see. All right, so you're looking at a cost of living of like about $1,500 a month if you don't own property, right? Because now your rent is part of your cost of living. All your utilities that are associated with renting are part of your cost of living. There's typically a service fee or like an HOA type of fee that's associated with, if you're renting or if you live like in a condo. Like if you even if you like bought the condo or bought the apartment, they don't really use the word condo here, but you're in a high-rise building. Well, there are things. There's probably a pool there. There's probably a gym there. There's a security guard downstairs that lets people in and out, right? There's an elevator, right, that you don't own because you're in a high-rise building. So you pay a fee for all of those amenities, and that fee never ends, right? And so when you factor those types of things in, you're looking at, being at this 1,500 a month type of cost of living for like a single person or possibly even a single parent, right? Which is still less than you would typically be looking at in the U.S. on a national, level. Henrock service charges. Are you asking? Is that a question mark after the service charges? Are you just helping me out with the name? If you're asking, yes, it's service charge. Yeah, it's a service charge. They have service plots, so you can buy a whole house, but it's in a gated community. Well, there's a guard at the gate, right? And then hopefully they take care of some other things as well. Like hopefully they pick up your trash every Thursday and they mow your lawn for you, like whatever, right? But that service charge, you may not have any control over it, okay? And it's forever. The only time that we typically recommend, or I shouldn't even say recommend because we never recommend it, but the only time that we're okay with it as far as an analysis, if we're doing due diligence on behalf of a client who's buying something like that, is if there is a covenant. Okay. Now in America, if you're black, you don't like the word covenant when it comes to real estate because the covenants in the United States used to say things like no black person can ever own this land on the title deed, right? But that's not what the covenants in Kenya say. So if there's a covenant on the title deed, then what the covenant will essentially say is that there's a share of the management company attached to every title deed that cannot be transferred. It is permanently attached to the title deed, right? And so what ends up happening is everyone who lives in that service community is a shareholder of the management company. So you have a vote in whether or not the prices go up. You have a vote in what services are offered. And you even have a vote in dissolving the services if it gets to that point where you're like, we just don't want to pay anymore, we'll mow our own lawn, right? So then it's like, okay, if you want to do that, fine, because at least you're the next year they don't triple the fees and there's nothing you can say about it, right? So there's that. Now, depending on where you are and depending on what your lifestyle is, you can change that standard of living big time, right? One of my friends is business partnered with the singer Khalees, who lives out here now, and she's in the same boat where she was like, oh man, it's so much more expensive, da 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 da. But she was started as a millionaire, right? So she has a millionaire lifestyle. She's maintaining that millionaire lifestyle, and so yeah. Because we cater to the millionaire class in the United States. If there's no catering to the millionaire class, then maintaining a millionaire lifestyle is more expensive, right? So there's a difference there depending on what you're trying to do. So like if you're in a 2-bedroom like luxury apartment, I guess, in Nairobi, Kilimani or Westlands, you got a pool, maybe a gym, you're looking at somewhere around like $600 to like $1,200 a month, right? In New York City or San Francisco, it's over $4,000 a month, right? So you still got a pretty decent discount in cost of living, right? You can hire a nanny for like $150 a month, right? As you guys know, like we have a governess, and then the nanny is below the governess. So a governess has more formal education, typically has like a master's in early childhood education, like all that stuff, right? So the governess is like 300 a month, right? Um, you're gonna spend, geez, probably excess of 4,000. We got friends in San Francisco. Hey, how are you? We got friends in San Francisco that have they have part-time nannies, right? So they got nannies that work 40 hours a week, 8 hours a day, Monday through Friday, right? And they're spending like $300,000 a year on two nannies, which means that on the weekends, right, and at night, where they probably typically need the nanny the most, they still are not covered, and they're still paying like $250,000 a year for that assistance. So that's crazy. Organic food, uh, your dining out is about 70% cheaper here. To have like veggie baskets and all that like delivered to your door, you're talking about $8 to $14 a week, right? Now, um, if you have kids, this is where some people they burn the savings, right? So this is important to like, you know, be honest about. Just because you instantaneously jump into a new financial class and instantaneously jump into a new social class, right? You're immediately part of the I guess the 1%, quite frankly, upon relocation. Okay, great. Now you're up there. Okay, that does not mean that you need to now purchase the most expensive everything, right? So the mindset now becomes your number one enemy. That you don't have an upper class mindset because you've never been in the upper class before, right? Because typically, most of the people who relocate are middle class or upper middle class. They're not one percenters by any stretch of the imagination, right? So, because of that, you got to check yourself on certain things, right? One of those things is the schools. A lot of folks will, start getting into these international schools, and they'll be charged 40,000 dollars per year per child for these international schools. So two kids, you're talking about $80,000 US dollars a year, depending on what school you throw them into. And the school that charges $20,000 a year, there's not that much of a difference in the quality of education, right? So now you're paying for reputation. Now it's the Gucci thing now, unfortunately, instead of the quality thing. So you got to get your head right. You got to understand, like, okay, yes, I want quality education for my kids, and I want to whatever. But that doesn't mean I pay for a reputation that doesn't, equate to a higher percentage chance that my kids are going to go to an Ivy League if that's what you want, or a better education overall for my. So you gotta like take a step back and really look into how those things work, because that is a hidden trap. We see so many people, and obviously their heart's in the right place, right? It's not like it's not bottle service. They're not trying to like ball out because they're one percenters all of a sudden. Like, that's not what's going on. They're trying to give their kids the best shot that they possibly can give them without doing the research to see if you're buying brand or you're buying quality. So you have to adjust your mentality and train yourself to have a quality mindset, not a price comparison mindset. We're like, oh, this is the most expensive, so this must be, the bee's knees. No, it's just expensive, all right? It's just elite, right? There's elitism everywhere, right? So it's just one of those things where if you're part of the elite families and those families only want the other elite kids around them and the blah, 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 now it's, $80,000 a year for your two kids. It's not necessary. So be careful with that. Don't destroy yourself on private schools. All right. How much do you need to make to be in the top 1%? So Americans in general are in the top, I believe it's 10% of the world. Right. I got to go back, and I don't have those numbers ahead in front of me. So don't hold me specifically to the number. But if I'm not mistaken, I want to say 26,000 US dollars is the top 10% globally. So a lot of people like to say, oh, you think we're rich just because we're from America? That's not true. I'm not rich. Yes, you are. You don't have the cost basis. You're not living in a mansion, you know what I mean, whatever. But literally, you can be working at McDonald's, and if you make $26,000 a year, you're in the top 10% globally, right? So they're not making an assumption. It's a fact that as far as what people make around the world, even some of the poorest working, right? Obviously, if you're unhoused or something, that we're talking about something different. But the poorest working Americans are still in the top 10% globally. So there's that. And if you're in the top 10% globally, there's not much difference coming into to Kenya. So, for example, there was an article that came out. Oh man, what were the numbers? There was an article that came out that the central bank like took a look at all the bank accounts, and you can easily Google this. And so the central bank took a look at all the bank accounts, and they had a number for the amount of Kenyan bank accounts, not necessarily Kenyan people, right? Not necessarily citizens, right? But Kenyan bank accounts that had 1 million shillings in it or more, right? And I'm trying to remember the number. The number was like pathetic. It. I feel like it was under 10,000 people, right? Like it was a crazy low number, considering that like 1 million shillings is like, I don't know, $8,000 or something like that, right? So there's that. Okay. Um. All right. Got somebody talk about Sweden. The most basic income. That's great. More power to you in Sweden there. Um, most of our clients are pretty intentional about coming to Africa. Most of our clients are not interested in Europe at all. 4 million shillings. Henrock, 4 million shillings for what? Oh, you read that? Yeah. No. That's a different report. This was absolutely one. This was absolutely 1 million shillings. It was like the amount of people with 1 million shillings or more in their bank account is, and then it was like less than 10,000. So yeah, you're pretty much 1%er off the boat. All right. Let's see. Aha, electricity. Power in Kenya can be expensive. So remember, we said the key factor is, do you own a home, right? Because if you own a home, you can have a power system attached to the home. That's why most of our packages include a home, right? Once you own a home, your cost of living drops down to under $500 a month, right? So a lot of our clients, what ends up happening is not only can power be expensive, it can also be unreliable, right? And so a lot of our clients don't even know when the power goes out, because the power might go out, but because all of those houses are off grid ready, they have solar panels or at least diesel backups and all of that stuff. When the power goes out, nobody cares. We don't even know it happened, right? And so those things mitigate, any of the issues that you may come up with if you're not a homeowner, right? If you're not a homeowner, then you have to depend, and that should be part of what the service fee is about, but then you have to depend on the building to have a backup generator, and the backup generator to be powerful enough to cover all of the units in the building when there's an issue. And of course, if something can go wrong, right? So you're paying your monthly service fees, then the power goes out, you're trying to work, on your computer, and the building's backup generator fails. What are you going to do? You're going to move out? You know what I mean? Like, what's next there? So having your own is definitely the best strategy, right? But it can be expensive. They have different tiers. So the more power you use, the more power costs, which is an interesting method of, I guess trying to be green to a certain extent, right? So they have different tariffs, they call it, right? There are different tariff rates for electricity. So the more power you use, the more power actually costs. And so if you use, less than, however many units of electricity a month, you're in the lowest tariff and you pay the least. And if you use more, then you pay the most, which is cool in a sense, because it means that the businesses with the big bright lit up buildings and the light effects at night and all of that, they're paying more because they're using up more of the power. versus like your average citizen slash taxpayer, which is actually appropriate in my opinion. Now, cars can be super expensive if you don't know what you're doing. Okay, we run into this all the time because we have a car upgrade on our packages. Used cars and new cars are essentially the same price, right? So the issue becomes if you have the wrong mindset, and it goes back to like developing the value mindset versus a price mindset. If you have the wrong mindset and you're bringing a price mindset from the United States, you're like, ooh, if I get a used car, I can just get a beater for now. I get a used car and da, 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 da. No, it will cost you the same as a new car. And you'll have no warranty. You'll have no information on the background of the car, so on and so forth, right? A lot of people would come in and like piecemeal us, which sucks for them. We tell them all the time, but we're not pushy on the sales thing. So we give a little education, then we do whatever you want to do. But a lot of folks will like come in and be like, all right, no, just do my immigration. All right, fine. Do the immigration. Oh, you know what? Now I need help finding a house. Okay. Then they spend 6 months trying to find a house and they realize all the houses they're looking at do not suit them. And so then they finally come back and they want us to build a house. Well, now it's more expensive. You didn't bundle it together, right? So we couldn't use economies of scale to get you a discount. Now you want a one-off house. So now you got to pay the price to build a one-off house, right? Okay, now we built the one-off house. Now, 3 months later, oh, well, I want a car now. Again, you didn't bundle it together. So we couldn't create an economy of scale discount because you keep one-offing everything, right? So there's a lot of folks that do that, and those folks typically end up with a used car. Versus the people who do the bundling, they get a brand new car, 7-year warranty, 200,000 kilometers, whichever comes first. Like now you're in business. Now you're not worried about maintenance costs, for accidents. Of course, you're still paying your oil changes and all that, but you know what I mean. Now you're good. Like you have a warranty, you're bumper to bumper, you're good on the vehicle, you're good on your house. You know what I mean. You have a structural warranty on your house and all of that stuff. You're good. So the better you plan these things, the better off you are. All right. So make sure that you're paying attention to that. But yeah, you can definitely, especially due to like import taxes, used cars could be just as expensive as a new car. Like a used Toyota RAV4 that costs 15,000 in America, if it was imported and it's used, it could cost 30,000 in Kenya. Right. So you want to make sure that you package in, with whoever is going to be doing your relocation, that you package your car in, you get everything all together at once so you can save some money. All right. Now, healthcare. Typically in Kenya, healthcare is way, 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 way cheaper. Right. I just had a surgery, what was it, 2 months ago, for a kidney stone, right? Laser surgery, the whole nine, state of the art. I don't have a scar anywhere, nothing like that. And so we did this surgery for this kidney stone. I didn't pay a dime. Insurance covered 100% of it. I upgraded to a ocean view private room at the private hospital, and I paid $7 for the upgrade. That was the only thing not covered by insurance. Insurance covered absolutely everything else. They left something called a double J stent in me to help me heal with no internal scars. So they left this stent in me for like 6 weeks. Came back, got the stent removed. Insurance paid for everything: the stent removal, the follow-up, visits, the medication. Like everything was covered, 100%, no copay, right? So if you have good insurance, you're solid as far as medical is concerned. There's not an issue there. If you're traveling for medical tourism, you want to get with a company called Traverse Culture. They specialize in medical tourism. They also do relocations as well, and they specialize in a more hand-holdy form of relocation, right? Like our clients are typically professionals. They know what they want, and we can provide it for them, and they're good. Like they don't want a whole bunch of extra stuff, right? Traverse Culture specializes in a more like, hey, let me take you to the market, let me take you to the grocery store. This is how you do grocery shopping. This is how you this is how you that. You know what I mean? For people who like want that experience, um, and they're legit, like they're 100% legit. So feel free to go do business with them. We trust them. You know, they're the only other relocation service that we consider to be legitimate coming out of the diaspora. So there's that. They have medical tourism down to the point where, like, if you're service connected, they know how to do all the paperwork for the service connected stuff and make sure that like you can use your VA medicine, your VA service connection here for medical tourism. So if you're a veteran, you know what I mean, you want to get a procedure done or something like that, definitely link up with them. If you come through us and ask us about it, we're going to bring them in anyway. So if you come to us and you want to do your relocation, but you got some medical stuff you want done, we're gonna end up bringing Traverse Culture in to handle that. We never do what's not in our expertise. So we never just take your money because you want something done and then we're not expert at doing it. All right. Let's see. A top tier international insurance plan in Kenya is anywhere between 4,000 and 12,000 a year, right? Nice to have both of you. I will recommend you to my friends who want to live on the coast. Oh yeah. Thank you, Chief. So it's about 4,000 to 12,000 a year. Top tier. That includes evacuation, by the way. Anyway, for people who are concerned about that. And a specialist visit in Nairobi could be like 15 to 30 bucks versus like the 200 you would pay in the US. Again, for me, I use an insurance company called Britam. All my employees also get the same insurance as me. They get the same level of insurance and the same insurance company. I have never had to co-pay anything. I've never had to come out of pocket ever. All right. Everything is always covered 100%. All right. So, for as far as healthcare goes, I've had no issues in Kenya at all. Even complex things, right? Like my wife went into an emergency state called pre-prom, right? So like her water broke while the baby was premature. And so now we have this emergency. I even called back to my doctors in the United States, like, hey, here's the situation. There's a P-prom, blah, 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 blah. So the doctors at Jefferson Health in Philadelphia at the Naval Yard were like, oh yeah, okay. So they're gonna have to give your wife steroids for X amount of hours. I forget how many hours, maybe 24. And they're essentially gonna have to give her steroids and hope that the steroids grows the baby's lungs, but the baby's gonna have expect the baby to have what is it? That breathing disease where you carry the inhaler around. I don't know why I can't. Asthma. Expect the baby to have asthma, for the rest of his life. Breathing problems, whatever, right? And so we're like, shit. All right, here we go. So what they did was they ended up bringing in a specialist, and when they brought in the specialist took some of like the leftover amniotic fluid. And I didn't even realize that amniotic fluid apparently has stem cells from mom and baby in it, right? I didn't know that. There's special stem cells in amniotic fluid. So they took the amniotic fluid that was left over, because remember the water broke is the problem. That's the whole emergency issue. So they took this, amniotic fluid that they could find, and they turned around and did some kind of genetic testing against mom and against baby using the separated stem cells, and they found like the exact treatment that benefited both with like the least amount of negative side effects, essentially, right? I'm not a doctor, so I'm not getting as technical as they probably could, but that's what they did. And so they did this like gene therapy for about 8 hours. It wasn't even anywhere close to what the American doctor said she was going to have to go through, and then the baby was born 100% normal. No asthma, no breathing problems, the full weight, full size, all of that, right? To the point where like the doctors at Jefferson wanted to connect with the doctors in Kenya to like figure out what they did. So, as far as medical is concerned, and my personal experiences with it, yeah, I don't see any difference or any kind of now. Private hospitals operate differently than like public hospitals, of course, but most of the insurance that you're going to get here, top tier, is going to cover private hospitals. All right, top tier, yeah. Well, it's not necessarily just top tier medical. That's a top tier international insurance plan, right? So if you're going, because like we don't pay no 12K, like not even close. So if you're going to maintain the USA on your plan and have like emergency evacuation and like an international, top tier international plan, that's where you're talking about 12K, not medical, right? I have a top tier family plan. So every member of my family is covered, and it doesn't matter how many members of my family I have, right? So everyone in my family is covered under the one plan. Like I said, I don't pay for anything. And that costs like, trying to do the math in my head, maybe it costs 2,000, right? So like just medical, I have a top tier plan that's covering 5 family members, and we don't pay anything for any procedure, dental, eye, medical, it's all covered. And so, yeah. So yeah, definitely not 12,000 a year for just medical. And those international plans, those are also family plans. So it's 12,000 a year for the family if you do that top tier international plan. Some people do it. They go back and forth to the United States enough that like they still want coverage when they're in the US. All right. Let's see here. Uh Biggest things that we get into, yeah, singles cheaper. Yep, singles cheaper. Yep. Biggest thing that we get into is people who don't know how to leverage, especially people in our community. That's not something that black folks like talk about around the breakfast table, right? How to leverage things, right? And so we'll get into a lot of situations where folks are like, I don't have the money, and I don't know how to get the money. I don't know how to leverage, right? And so being able to leverage here is so much more powerful than being able to leverage in the US. And it's an easy way also to get here, right? How long have I been here? We have been coming back and forth here for like 12 years. And then I have been living here for going on 7. So back to leveraging. We have so many clients that they'll leverage their way over here. And then being here pays back whatever leverage, whatever debt they use, whatever credit they use, whatever leverage they utilize. Being here actually pays that back in the US. So that happens all the time, especially here, right? Where I live, you can make money in US dollars here. Okay, so being able to make money in US dollars means that you can pay debts back home that are in US dollars. We have tons of people who will leverage, real estate, leverage, credit cards, leverage, whatever, get over here and then pay that back. We also have people that fail to pay it back. Guess what? They're American. They file bankruptcy, right? Your credit score is not universal. You know how many people think that? How many people think their credit score is universal? Like if they go to China, their U.S. credit score follows them, right? Your credit score is not universal, right? So if you live here, who cares about your U.S. credit score, right? So plenty of people will, leverage. They'll make their good faith effort to pay back whatever leverage, they took. And then if they don't, that's what bankruptcy's for, right? And they'll utilize that. Now here, sometimes, like let's say they're Class K. Remember we talked about Class K in the beginning. Ordinary residency permit leads to dual citizenship. Most people want that. Most people are on the Class K permit. All right. Now, you're not allowed to work, right? So you're not allowed to earn income from here by working, okay, on that permit. So a lot of folks, they'll bond ladder, right, which is essentially bond arbitraging. They'll bond ladder. And by bond laddering, as you guys know, they'll be able to make a multi-year income, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years worth of income from investments. It'll be capital gains income. from Kenya. And by the time that income hits you, taxes have already been paid if there are taxes to be paid, right? One of the bonds that sometimes becomes available is called an infrastructure bond. Infrastructure bonds are tax exempt. So if you have infrastructure bonds, it's going to lower the overall taxability of your entire bond portfolio, right? Even if you don't, it's a 10% withholding tax, and that 10% withholding tax is taken before the money ever hits your account, right? So there's no complex, tax filings that need to be done at that point on the Kenyan side. Okay. So a lot of folks will come into that and they'll do it that way, and then they'll end up with monthly income, right? You need at least 6 bonds to have income every single month, and they have to be strategically chosen so that because bonds pay out twice a year. So you have to strategically choose them so that each bond you have pays out in a different 2 months a year. Okay, or else you could have 6 bonds that all pay out in the same 2 months, which doesn't help you, unless you want to be stretching, paychecks for 6 months. so, so that's how you want to, stack out bond laddering, and then you could essentially move here and retire instantaneously, not have to work again, and have passive income for 10, 20, even 30 years. 30 is the max, right? 30 is the max. There is also something called amortization, where they will start giving you part of your principal back. So bonds are a little bit different than stocks. And when you buy the stocks, your principal is part of the value of the stock. They're not separate, right? So if the stock goes to zero, it's not like, oh, it went to zero, but you bought the stock at $5 a share. Here's your $5 back. But the stock went to zero. That's not the way it works. You lose everything. It goes to zero, right? You lose everything you invested. With a bond, the principal that you put in comes back to you either during the bond through amortization or at the maturity of the bond where it just gets kicked back to you in one big lump sum, right? So your principal comes back plus the interest you charge the government for holding your money. That's what a bond is. A bond turns you into the bank, all right? And the government is a person that you loan the money to, and the government is guaranteeing you whatever the interest rate is for whatever the term or the maturity is. And so the longest maturity is 30 years. The shortest maturity is like 5 years on a bond. Bills are shorter. You can get like a 1-year bill. I suppose you can get a 2-year bond, but I've never seen one, right? So that's how that works. You can get it back. You can get it back. It depends on when you gave it up. It depends on when you gave it up, because it used to be that Kenya didn't have dual citizenship. And so there is a method of reclaiming. So like once they started dual citizenship, it was like, okay, all of you Kenyans who went to America, went to the UK, went to wherever, and gave up your citizenship to get their citizenship, there's now a method of you like essentially coming back and getting your citizenship back. So if that's what you're talking about, you can do that. If you got rid of like American citizenship, you're fucked. There's no way to get it back. All right. All right. So the easiest people that are essentially go or no go, typically you do have to see like what your personal situation is, right? But the easiest people are retirees that at least have 24,000 in pension income and stuff like that. They're typically a go. Remote workers that are like 90,000, 80,000 and above are typically an automatic go. Kids, families with kids, you got to see the entire situation and what they want for those kids to be able to figure out if they're a go or not. Super high earners have to have a structure in place, right? If they just try to come over here, they make $300,000 a year. They just try to come over here with that $300,000 a year. That's a no-go. But people making that kind of money normally aren't that dumb. Okay. Oh, man. All right, guys, give me a second. Sorry, told you guys I'm sick today. I'll be right back. Sorry about that, guys. So yeah, sitting here suffering with this daggone stomach virus, and just every now and then I end up having to throw up or worse. Went to the doctor, didn't have to pay anything. Um, it's a stomach. It's a 48-hour stomach bug. So we'll see. I should be done with this thing by tomorrow. What did I eat? Hummus. That's the only thing I can think of. I went somewhere and I had hummus with rosemary, like fried pita bread. That's the only thing I can think of that I ate before the stomach bug hit. So yeah, wait till you turn 50. I don't have to wait too long. Jesus. Oh yeah. But sorry for that interruption there. Let me see. Did I miss any questions while I was running off to the bathroom there? Going back to work now. All right. Have fun at work. Living in Philly, born in Kenya. I dig it. I like that, baby. Is it Bebe or BB? All right. All right. So that is the breakdown. That is the real wrap on what you're looking at when you come over. It's not the best thing for everybody. If you are a super high earner, typically those people can work remotely, yes. But if you are like, I work for Google and I make $500,000 a year in a salary, in a W-2, then you got to create some things. You got to structure some things to make it worthwhile to move anywhere. Typically, you're going to have more income tax once you become a tax resident in that place off of that $500,000 US than you would have been dealing with, in the US, right? An ATV? You mean like the vehicle, like an all-terrain vehicle ATV? You can have one of those. You can bring one of those with you if you want. If you already own it and it's more than a year old, you can get a waiver to bring it with you because it's not steering sided, right? So the issue that like our British clients, they bring their cars with them if they feel like it, right? Because you can get a household exemption. And if you get a household exemption, you can bring your household with you. Nothing can be newer than a year old, and you will be exempt from the import charges and all of that, right? So they put all the stuff from their house in a container, and they put their car in the container, and they ship it here. And the steering wheel is on the left side, right? Because they're from the UK. Also, all their appliances have the right plug and use the right voltage because they're from the UK. Right, but our U.S. clients don't typically do that. They might bring their household. There are people who they'll ship their household, but the cars can't come here because they're not on the right side, the steering wheel, and the appliances need like a converter, right? Because they're 120 volt, not 240 volt. So, but with ATVs and motorcycles, they can do it because there is no alternative steering side for those kinds of devices. So they can bring those devices if they wish. Now, you talk about ordering one from China, that's a brand new one, so you're going to pay the import fee. So you're better off possibly coming here and just buying it here. That's really, really interesting. I don't know what's going on over there on Instagram. It's like tracking my head. Huh. That's interesting. So no, Instagram, I'm not moving the camera. Like, must be an Instagram feature. It's just tracking my face. All right. Yeah. Yeah, you can definitely like pick them up here. It's not like they're not sold here. What kind of structure if you're making? I mean, if you're making over 300, you probably should have a trust already. Probably. You should probably have some some asset structures and some estate planning structures in place. If you're making over 300,000, if you're making over $300,000 a year, you're in the top you're in the top 10% easy, right? You're firmly in the top 10% of the United States. So, if that's the case, you should probably have some structures already set up. So if you're in that position, you almost don't need to ask what kind of structures. The question then becomes, can I use my, offshore trust in Kenya? Like those become the questions of those people, the people who are like really in that position versus, what are the structures totally? Because they typically have some structures in place. So what is it cheaper to buy in bulk from China? Are you talking about doing like an ATV business? Because if you're doing like a business or something, then I mean, yeah, it might be cheaper to buy in bulk from China, but you need to go there and like build out that relationship. You can't like get online and be dealing with China and think it's going to be cheaper. That's not going to work. But like how we go there every year and like meet with our suppliers and have dinner, and like sometimes we don't even sign contracts. Like sometimes we just go like chop it up because Chinese are a little bit different. Like for us, business is business. For them, they do business with friends. So if where we don't mix like business and pleasure as Americans, like business is business, friendship is friendship. For them, they do business with friends. That's who they do business with. So if you're not maintaining a relationship, you're not going to get good pricing. You're not going to get good deals. You're not going to get the best shipping. Like you're just, you know, it's not going to work out well for you. But yeah, if you're going to do like an ATV rental business at the beach, which there are a couple little ATV rental places out here, but that would work, I'm sure. It's up to you, obviously. You have to, implement it properly, but it's a viable business. Then, yeah, you can definitely buy in bulk, from China. You just want to get those relationships going. You probably want to also make a relationship with somebody over here who's in an export zone, so with a EPZ they call them, because those are tax-free zones, kind of like the ones in Dubai. There are zones where if you're in those zones, which is expensive to get in there, but if you're in those zones, then you have like tax-free importation and exportation, I believe, as well, at least on the Kenyan side. Oh, okay, got you. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe they're here already, just because like there are like sand dunes and stuff like that. So like it's part of the tourist economy here to be driving around in the sand. You know what I mean, on four wheelers. So I don't know if that specific one you want is here, but if not, then yeah, you just got to import it. Same thing with like cars. Like there's somebody there. I can't think of a charging station out here like that, but like somebody imported a Tesla just because they wanted one and just paid for the importation fee. I think the only charging station is the one that they installed at their house. So, but but yeah, you can import anything. There's a formula that I can't think of right now. There's a formula that we use like when we're importing stuff to build houses. So you can add just like a straight number, and that'll typically cover the import fees. I feel like it's 38%, and it's a higher number. Like when you're doing a general, calculation like that, the number is always higher than what's the real number is. So you're always pleasantly surprised. but there's like a simple calculation that you can use to figure out what the import fees might be. I'm almost certain it's 38%. I have to talk to my general contractor and see. All right. Anything else on the reality of relocation? If not, I'm gonna go eat toast till this damn stomach bug is done. It's crazy. All these years and we still can't beat a virus. Bacteria, yeah, antibiotics all day long, but viruses, man. Thank you, thank you. Any other questions on that? All right. I cannot remember what tomorrow is, but I know that the data team definitely has a breakdown on what's happening tomorrow. Let me see if I can pull it up real quick. So that means for you guys on Instagram, I'm going to go ahead and sign off so I can use this device to pull that up. So just look for posts that will let you know what it is we're talking about tomorrow. All right, guys. Thanks for being with us. Okay. So that Instagram is gone. And what do these guys have on my calendar here? Tomorrow. Oop, my wife just bought something, just got a notification. Let's see. Okay. Tomorrow, digital nomad permit versus investor permit. Which one is the right one for you? So we'll do a deep dive into those two permits, figure them out tomorrow. So if you've been thinking that you want to work over here or you're a digital nomad, which might have a tax incentive built in for that whole tax residency thing, excuse me, then tomorrow is your day. We'll get into digital nomad permit versus investor permit, and go from there. All right. In the time it took me to look that up, nobody asked a question, so I'm assuming everybody is good. So I will see you guys tomorrow at around the same time. We'll start posting what the topics are in advance, so you can just go to our Facebook or our TikTok, possibly also our Instagram, and even maybe our LinkedIn, and see what the topic is going to be. And we'll see you guys tomorrow night.